Alright, we're going to talk about hammers. Try not to go on a rant about commander hammers. Here we go. Hey y'all, it is Eli with Alchemy Custom Weaponry, here to talk to you about, well, our favorite thing, 1911s. And today I've got something that, on the surface seems like a pretty, let's call it kind of simple topic, At Alchemy Custom Weaponry, we offer two hammer choices with our firearms. That's a ring hammer and a delta hammer. Now, I'll be honest with you, more often than you'd think, I get calls about, hey, which one's better? Which one's going to perform better? Now, we all know the answer is going to be the ring hammer. But, let's get into this a little bit, and I'm going to quickly tell you, if you only come to this video to know, hey, I'm between a delta and a ring hammer, which one is going to perform better, they're going to perform about the same. Now, listen, if you choose to have a delta hammer on your gun, okay, that's fine, but I'm not going to have to be the person to stand in front of God and explain to him why I chose to put the incorrect hammer on my Alchemy Custom Weaponry 1911. But, hey, listen, your alchemy is going to be beautiful either with a delta hammer. It's just going to be even more so, okay, with a ring hammer, okay? I'm just, and this you might think is an opinion, but it's kind of certified fact. No, I'm just messing with you. But the ring hammer, I'm absolutely biased towards it. But as far as performance between the two, you won't notice a difference. But let's talk a little bit about hammers on 1911s. We kind of touched a little bit on it on last week's video where we talked about the patents of the 1911s that led to it, and the hammer was a big part of, a lot of the design aspects of some of the patents. And so let's walk back down memory lane, walk back down, John Browning history lane, and let's start with this 1918 U.S. property 1911. Now, this gun is kind of hard to see in this lighting, I apologize, but this gun has this real big spur hammer on it. Now, why does it have that big spur? As we discussed, it is so that you could cock the hammer and then decock the hammer with one hand, because they were not carrying the guns cocked and locked. You would not see cocked and locked carry until post-World War II. I mean, some people may have done it pre-World War II, but cocked and locked carry didn't really get popularized until after World War II. Jeff Cooper was a big part of that. Now, one note, if you've ever played with a pre-war Colt or pre-war 1911 of some kind, or even 1911, some 1911 A1s, you'll notice that the hammer has a vengeance. It can smell if you've had any polymer on you, and it's going to bite you. And so, I think it's funny that, like every time I go to the range, I typically take like a 1919 Colt government model that I really enjoy shooting. And I go to the range and I'm shooting it, and I mean, almost from the word go, I'm bleeding on that gun. I mean, I'm cleaning more blood off that gun than carbon sometimes. And when I leave the range, it looks like I'm on an episode of Supernatural, if you've ever seen that. Dean Winchester actually on that show carries a 1911, and he carries it with the hammer up, which is real interesting. You don't see that kind of details, all the time. But I digress. I look like I've been on an episode of Supernatural because my hand's covered in blood, the gun's covered in blood. It's a real, PG-13 experience. And so a lot of people had this with the original 1911. So you saw a little bit of this addressed in the 1911 A1. They kind of lengthened the grip safety beaver tail, if you will. The tang of the grip safety, they lengthened that a little bit. They shortened the hammer a little bit. They narrowed it up. And still some people had some discomfort shooting the guns. Now, a lot of you are thinking, well, why don't you put a bigger grip safety on? Well, the grip safety that in a modern 1911 really didn't start being used until, like your Swenson's, your King's Gun Works, I want to say like the late 60s, 70s. You really didn't start to see those. So in the post-war era, with Colt being kind of solicited by the United States military, some faction of the military, to create an officer's handgun that never actually ended up being adopted by the military. Colt came out with the lightweight Colt Commander. Now, it is important to note that it is a lightweight gun, okay? Lightweight meaning it had aluminum, or as people across the pond incorrectly say, aluminium, and they wonder why we threw their damn tea in the harbor, okay? Any person who says aluminium, I'm not going to let them figure out, I'm not going to pay those people taxes, okay? So, anyways, it had an aluminum frame, and it had specifically a ring hammer. Now, at the time, the early Colt marketing material noted this as a Mauser style hammer. And I know what a lot of people are thinking, Mauser, like the, German Mauser rifles. Well, no, the Mauser C96 broom handle, which in itself is a pretty gangster pistol. I mean, literally gangster, like a lot of Chinese gangsters were really fond of those. And especially the M712 Schnellfire, Mauser C96. We're getting off topic, but the Mauser had a ring hammer, and it became very popular, very iconic. Again, this is one of the very first commercially successful semi-automatic handguns. So the ring hammer, and it had a cone hammer as well, but it later was developed into a ring style hammer. So Colt pulled that aesthetically from the Mauser C96, and they marketed it early as the Mauser style hammer. It would then become known as the Commander hammer because Colt only offered it on the lightweight and combat commanders. Now, moving into the custom 1911 world post-war, people realized that, yeah, we could reprofile hammers, we could, do some stuff here and there, but an easy fix to hammer bite was to use a ring hammer. Now, that's why you kind of see a lot of 5-inch guns of that period with ring hammer. I mean, first of all, it just looks freaking cool, okay? And one thing people often forget is that the kind of underlying of a lot of custom 1911s, maybe less so back in the day, but definitely more so now, is that you just want something that's freaking cool, And the ring hammer on a 5-inch gun just looks freaking cool. And so a lot of people, would opt to have ring hammers put on these early custom 1911s. You see them on Swenson's. You see them on pretty much every manufacturer of custom 1911s had examples with ring hammers. Now, we're going to kind of give you a little taste, but very early on, Jim Hogue would kind of elongate that ring hammer a little bit, and it's kind of giving it a little different shape. One thing that you'll notice in the early custom 1911 world is people were trying to differentiate their work from other people's, and they were trying to do, the aesthetics of things definitely were beginning to take over. Now, when you get into the forums and the black hole that is, you can get to some, threads where people will argue about lock time, for accuracy with different hammer types. I will tell you that the majority of 1911 shooters, like 99.9% of 1911 shooters, normal guys, will probably never notice one hammer type to another regarding accuracy or lock time. Now, if you're a big-time bullseye shooter, completely different game, okay? So, but even then, I don't really know how much how much it's noticeable. That's a little bit outside my pay grade. But I know for me, I don't notice a difference shooting a gun with an original spur hammer, a ring hammer, a delta hammer, what have you. So you go through and you start to notice that a lot of people are using the ring hammers, and they're quick and easy way to not have to have a new grip safety, because you can take a stock grip safety and essentially fit a ring hammer to the gun, and which is easier than fitting a safety in most cases, and you'd have a gun that wouldn't bite you to death, or make you look like, that Carrie girl, I think that's her name, who's all covered in blood and such, if you're into that, but it wouldn't make you look like that after you leave the range. So I've actually got a couple of cool examples. So moving here, this is a 1979 Colt government model. Now, this is an interesting one because this is kind of what I consider the late 70s, early 80s working man's pistol, okay? So this gun really has a little bit of work to it, but not a ton. It's definitely had the slide squeezed. The barrel has been worked on, but it hasn't been replaced. Has been worked on. This has a collet bushing, which they probably wouldn't have replaced that anyways, because it's actually a pretty tight fit. The slide's been reblued because they also have done Smith & Wesson K-frame sights. As you can see, it does have a different trigger. The trigger is very nice on this gun, actually, and it has a ring hammer. It has, what I can tell is the stock safety, or it doesn't look to me like it's a modified safety at all. Now, the nice thing about this is, you can shoot this gun all day long, and because of the ring hammer, you're not going to get any hammer bite. And again, by this point, hammer bite maybe wasn't quite as common, but it was still something people thought about, and the ring hammer was able to alleviate any concerns of that issue. Now, moving in a little bit further, when extended grip safeties, or excuse me, I guess extended beaver tail grip safeties, if you will, became more popular, the ring hammer really became less about the function aspect and way more about the looks aspect. I mean, any person who doesn't like the looks of the ring hammer, they're not invited to the quinceañera, you know what I'm saying? So this gun is a 1989 Wilson LE AccuComp, and you can see it has an extended beaver tail where no matter what the hammer is, it's not going to contact your skin at all. But the ring hammer still is there because it's kind of, one of those iconic signs of a custom 1911, in my opinion. Now, as I mentioned, Hogue would begin kind of ovaling out these ring hammers. And now, I wish that I had a Hogue to show you, okay? I don't. But they began ovaling out these ring hammers to kind of give it a little better look. There is probably a little bit more. I've seen some of those early ovaled ring hammers, and you can thumb cock those a little bit easier than a regular ring hammer. It's actually not the easiest to thumb cock a ring hammer. But by the time that ring hammers really came on the scene with custom 1911s, cocked and locked was the dominant way to carry the gun. Jeff Cooper had kind of done away with any form of the hammer on the loaded chamber, as you saw in World War I and World War II with these early 1911s. But the ring hammer actually would stick around for a long time. I mean, it's still in use today by us for sure. And even in kind of like the source material, this is a 1998 Colt M1991A1 that is a Clark Custom Meltdown, and it still has a ring hammer that's been it's been modified a little bit. It has some mill work actually, and it's very beautiful, but you can still see the ring hammer prevalent there. Now, in the late 80s, you started to see the use of the elongated oval hammer more. And then that sort of, you saw it on Nastoffs, which we will... Nastoffs and the hammer situation is kind of, if you're into custom 1911s, you know where I'm going with that, but we won't go much further. But the ovaled kind of hammer became a little bit more popular. Now ring hammers were a little bit more the norm, so people wanted something a little different. I think I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was like a, I think Heine, and I think there was an Ed Brown. I was reading like a 1987 edition of American Handgunner, and both of those companies were advertising compensated guns. The Ed Brown was the Maxi Comp. I don't know if the Heine was a comp gun, but I do know the Ed Brown was a Maxi Comp, and both of them had that kind of ovaled, elongated hammer. And that sort of became kind of like the cool guy hammer. And it really took off. It became, it shaped more and more until it got more like a Delta hammer that you see something like on this, Quantico here, this ACW Quantico with the Delta hammer. Now, the Delta hammer, in my opinion, and this is just probably coming from a little bit of the age that I am, the Delta hammer to me doesn't really take off until the Springfield Professional or the, FBI HRT stuff. I do have a Springfield Professional that I would probably have used for this video, but I've actually had it converted to a ring hammer, so it doesn't really do us any good. But I do have a 2000s Les Baer TRS, and you can see here it does have a nice Delta hammer. So in the mid 90s, the Delta hammer kind of becomes the cool guy, the tactical kind of way to do things, and it actually was it took off. And now you'll notice even on production guns, you'll mostly see Delta hammers. So Delta hammers are kind of the norm now. And I think they're so the norm that now they're not as cool anymore. Ring hammers, I think, are coming back hard and strong. You'll actually see a lot of other companies starting to use ring hammers. But either way, you really can't go wrong if you're using, the Lord's gift to humanity, the 1911. I'm not really going to rib you too hard one way or another if you got a Delta or a ring hammer, but it's just nice to kind of maybe have a little bit of a timeline and history behind why these hammers came about and where they came about from. And again, we're by no means historians here at Alchemy Custom Weaponry. I'm just kind of wanting to, give you a little bit more information about some of this stuff, and hope you realize that there really isn't much performance difference between the Ring and the Delta, other than, I'm not going to lie to you. I think women know when a man's got a ring hammer on, they can just sense the extra testosterone. 1911 give you a lot of testosterone boost, but then the ring hammer on top of it, straight through the roof, and then like that Beyonce girl says, if you like it, you should have put a ring on it. So, hey, it's Eli with Alchemy Custom Weaponry. Thank you for joining me. This message was sponsored by the Ring Hammer Gang. So convert to ring hammers, or don't. I don't really care what you do. But have a great day, and no matter what hammer you use, okay, carry cocked and locked.